Good evening. This is Google Rocks, August 5th, number 44. And we have with us a special guest today, Kimble McCann. And I will introduce him in a second. He's the one waving at the bottom. And let me introduce the two other panelists that we have today. Michelle Colt, would you tell us who you are, Michelle, please?
Sure. Hi, I'm Michelle Colt, and I'm a library media specialist at Halikula Elementary School.
Great. And Ken I know is listening. Are you there, Ken?
Yeah,
Ken Akawili is with us.
Ken Akawili, Vice Principal, Penalty High School.
I hear barking in the background.
Dogs in the neighborhood.
Dogs in the neighborhood. We're being audio bombed. Okay, so Ken Akawili is with us as well. So welcome. And we are going straight to Kimble. And Kimble is the educational technology specialist at Kamehameha. And he will tell us more about his background, and he's going to talk to us about universal design for learning. So move it over to Kimble. Welcome, Kimble.
Hey, thanks so much, Linda. It's really awesome to be here. It's always a pleasure connecting with you, either through Google Plus or in person at those awesome Google Summits that we have. Wish we had more of them. So yeah, today I'd like to talk to you about one of my passions, which is supporting all learners with universal design for learning. And I'll kind of go into more detail about what that's all about. And by all means, I welcome this as an open conversation. I'll be sharing some slides, but if any of the participants have any questions or comments as we move along, certainly chime in. And what I'd like to present to you is a presentation that I developed and shared for a really phenomenal conference that I had the honor of participating in this summer. It was called UD 2014. And what this was a universal design conference in Lund, Sweden. And never in my wildest dreams did I think I would venture over to Sweden to present a paper. But I had the fortunate opportunity to do that, and so the next thing I knew, I was on a plane over there. And to kind of give you a history about what universal design is, and I put a number of these resources in our resource document, so mahalo, Linda, for that. Universal design was a concept that started in architecture, which was developed, I believe, in the 80s, and there's actually a Universal Design Center that came out of the University of North Carolina. So the whole premise behind this was to make buildings and architecture accessible for everyone. For instance, when we go to a supermarket, how do we enter the store? The doors kind of slide open, right? If we're traversing streets, we have curb cuts. And those are all examples of making public spaces accessible for everyone, right? And when we do that, it doesn't necessarily just benefit people with disabilities. So think about, maybe a parent with a stroller crossing the street, a person on a skateboard, when you're going into the store, your arms are full, you can't reach to open up the door. Or even if you're at the gym, they have closed captioning on the TV. So that's an example of how originally resources were designed for benefiting people with disabilities, but really the truth of the matter is that universal design, good design, benefits everyone. So that's where universal design originally comes from. And from there we have movement in education, universal design for learning. And this is a big movement to kind of make learning accessible to everyone. So that's just kind of a little background on that. And as we kind of go through here, I'll give you some examples and some resources. And a big part of what I'm presenting today is my doctoral research. which is a case study on how one particular teacher is supporting inclusion with technology. So, and more specifically, her knowledge of technology. So what I'm going to do right now is share my screen, and I have a PowerPoint that I have converted to a PDF, and I've uploaded that to the share file too, so feel free to download that and view that. And let's see, can you see my my PDF here?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So this is a super long title, but the gist of it is how is this one individual supporting inclusion with technology? So the long title is Using Technological, Pedagogical, and Content Knowledge. This is known as Tpac to support Universal Design for Learning, or UDL. And so I'm putting in parentheses here by my name because I'm hoping to defend this presentation this fall semester. Fingers crossed, everybody. And this is, again, a big part of my research. So first and foremost, I'd like to say aloha to everyone and thank you so much for coming in. It's just an honor to be invited and to connect with you all and to share my passion with you. So again, if you have questions, I can see the chat box. Feel free to chime in there, or if you have some verbal questions, just go ahead and jump on in. I'd also like to acknowledge some very special people in my life. My committee has been awesome at the UH. There's a wonderful program in educational technology at the University of Hawaii. And my committee has been absolutely supportive of this research and my journey through this program. And I really would like to acknowledge the participant in the DOE for kind of giving me the opportunity to peep inside of this world, this classroom. I'll describe her a little more in detail in a little bit. But, you know, conducting research in the DOE is not easy, and I really want to give a lot of gratitude to the DOE for allowing me the permission to come in and to conduct this research. So it's a big honor. I'd also like to...
Kimble, can I ask you a quick question? Sorry.
Of course, yeah.
So I'm just wondering, is it typical that you would go outside of your place of work and go to a public school to do the research? Is that what they encourage you to do in your doctoral program? Well,
that's a good question. You know, and in the doc program, everybody comes from a different background. We have people in the higher ed sector, we have people in the independent, and a lot of people in the K-12 sector. So wherever you're coming from and whatever you're passionate about, they're going to encourage you to follow that because you're going to commit a lot of time towards researching that, right? So whatever your passion is, they want to encourage you to follow that. And so for me, my big passion is supporting all learners and supporting educators in the field, but also, as I'll introduce, public schools. So this study is centered around a Title I school teacher, where usually these situations or these settings don't have the most resources, right? And technologically speaking. So that was kind of my passion for this study.
Oh, okay, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that because I wasn't sure if it was your passion or if it was the rules of the program. So thank you for explaining that. And I think I'm jumping ahead of myself, but is one of your pups a mini pincher?
It is. Yeah, that's Fidel.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Oh, so cute. I have a mini pincher too, and she's absolutely crazy. How old is your dog?
So Fidel is, I believe, 9 years old.
Do they calm down? Do they calm after year 2?
Yeah, he's a pretty mellow dude.
Okay.
You know, we're gonna go to the park afterwards, so
very fun.
I won't say that too loudly, but yeah. So they've definitely been a guiding force throughout my doctoral journey. So yeah. So, and that's Luna on the left. She's an Australian cattle dog. And Fidel on the right. So they've been great, but also I'd really like to acknowledge my family, my friends, those people that have kind of challenged me, so to speak, over the course of this journey. But also my coworkers and my peers have been just absolutely awesome, instrumental in this. So let's talk a little bit about my experience. I grew up in Atlanta, so where we had ISTE this year, and so it was a pleasure going home. But I grew up with, believe it or not, 5 sisters, and I'm the only boy, big family. And my sister Ashley was born with spina bifida, so my passion for connecting for all individuals kind of started with her, so I really credit her for that. And we're roughly around the same age, and we grew up together, and we were often in the same grade level, but often in separate classrooms. And so that always kind of struck me as kind of weird. We would go to the same pool, or we would go to the same church, or, obviously as a family out to get dinner together, and we weren't treated strangely, but yet, when we went to school, we were separated. And at the same time, we graduated. We were 94 graduates, but we always had separate classes, and so that was kind of unusual in my mind. And then growing up with my family, we were always kind of actively involved with the Special Olympics. So my sister was in a wheelchair; she still is, and so we had the fortunate opportunity to connect with the Special Olympics and participate. So I always had a passion for that. And throughout college, one of my big projects was working for an awesome organization called the RFBD, which is also known for the Recording for the Blind and Dyslexic. And so after finishing school, I had a management information systems degree. So a lot of my peers went to the cubicle and IBM and went to, different programming jobs. And after that, I was like, you know what, I want to go to California and I want to become a teacher. So I threw everything in my car, as many guitars as I could, and I drove cross country. And I went back to grad school, where I got my credential, my master's, and kind of wanted things to turn full circle, so decided to jump back into technology. And about 6 years ago, I heard about this cool PhD program in Hawaii, of all places, and that's all it took for me and the dogs to jump in the plane and head over to Oahu. And so it's really in Los Angeles where I kind of cut my professional teeth, so to speak. I became a teacher at a non-public school, and this is kind of a school where it's kind of a last resort for some kids, before they get kicked out of the system altogether. And then I kind of transitioned into the public sector, where I supported a lot of different self-contained classrooms for students with emotional behavior disorders. And so I did that for about 5 or 6 years, and before moving over to Hawaii. And at UH, I had a wonderful opportunity to serve as an ID, an instructional designer. And this is a really cool opportunity where I learned how to convert a lot of face-to-face courses into online learning. And so I was with this group called the DC group throughout 3 years. And at the same time, I kind of jumped on board with this awesome project called the CREED project. And so what CREED researches is a lot of culture-based learning. And so they promote standards for that, and that stems out of the Ed Psych department of UH in the College of Ed. So I had neat experience as a videographer. I got to go to schools, videotape classes, and that was my first exposure to Hawaiian immersion schools, which was just absolutely amazing. Never before had I been to a school where the school bell was a conch, and that was just phenomenal. And throughout my doc program, I had the opportunity to also serve as an ed consultant through Smart Technologies. I got certified as a Smart Ed consultant, And what that meant was I went to schools across the state, public, private, and charter, to teach them about smart boards and related technology. And I got to conduct some PD and teachers, connect with teachers across the state, which was really cool. But my heart was really with supporting teachers full-time and not necessarily selling them technologies. So I had a great opportunity to connect with Kamehameha Schools, where I'm currently residing as a EdTech specialist. So it's a great position, and I'm not just saying that because my boss is in this hangout as well. It's a really great team, and I think we do a lot of cool work, and it's given me opportunities to connect with awesome educators like you, Linda, Ken, and Michelle too. And on the side, my dream is to kind of develop a company where I can continue to research and develop assistive technologies. So a big passion of mine is not only supporting people, but technology and kind of merging those together. So enough about me. I'd just like to bring up a couple of quotes that have kind of inspired me throughout the year. And it seems like every school that I've been to, there's been like an Aristotle poster, either in the library or in the counselor's office. So I'd like to definitely salute Aristotle. And investigating this particular teacher of this study, I found that educating the heart is also essential. And I credit a lot of the people that I've kind of connected with over the years, especially in education, have really embraced this and practiced this. But also being kind of a punk rocker too, I'd like to salute David Bowie, and this quote has really kind of hit home, and I think this kind of relates to my passion for technology too. So tomorrow definitely belongs to those who can hear it coming. So let's talk about inclusion. Inclusion is just where it's at. It's building equity, and it's definitely on the rise. And it's specifically within the DOE, there's a big push, and this is a statistic from a couple of years back where the DOE wanted to dramatically increase individuals with disabilities inside the regular education setting. So take them out of the fully self-contained classroom and promote more of an inclusive model. So this is a pretty big goal, I would say. And so this was a 6-year plan for the DOE to kind of gradually push students from these self-contained placements into more of a inclusive and communal environment. So that was really freaking interesting to me as a researcher to see how this is going through. And I think it's relevant to other researchers in the field too. At the forefront of this UDO movement is cast.org, and if you have your browsers open, I would strongly encourage you to bookmark this site. It's awesome. CAST is the Center for Applied Special Technologies, and it's the epicenter for the UDO movement. It stems from David Rose, an awesome researcher from Harvard that kind of kickstarted this project, and to this day they have a lot of great resources, PD opportunities, and literature regarding UDO. And within UDO, there's a set of guidelines, and UDO is basically a set of principles that aims to make our curricula and our instructional efforts more inclusive. So it goes across 3 main categories, and as you can see, 1 is providing multiple means of representation. Number 2 is providing multiple means of action and expression. And number 3, providing multiple means of engagement. And if we think about that, and with respect to Google Rocks and with respect to all the awesome Google tools, we can do this through Google, and I think we can do this through a lot of these tools and strategies. So I really wanted to depict a story of how this could be done, or what does it look like, and to portray kind of an honest view of that. So a book that really kind of opened my eyes was through CAST, was called Teaching Every Student in the Digital Age. And one of my favorite teacher words is the word free, and this book is free, available via CAST, as is a number of other great resources. And so also through CAST, they're kind of giving this, announcement, please help us research UDL. So these are the areas that we really need to know what's going on, what's working, what's not working, and so on. And right here we have some major players in the UDL-related research. And I put myself at the bottom there just because I was fortunate enough to be a part of this UD conference in Lund. One particular educator that I actually got to meet at ISTE this year was Dave Eddyburn. And he's a super swell guy. And what Eddyburn is introduced to the kind of the UDL world was the A3 model, which stands for advocacy, accommodation, and accessibility. So these are the kind of the phases that we need to move through in order to kind of make an inclusive and accessible environment for all of our students. And this, we start off and by being an advocate for students with disabilities, right? We kind of reach out reactively, where we say, hey, these people need these conditions, they need these supports, and what I mean by that, that's kind of like taking a reactionary standpoint. And so in the middle here, we kind of take the accommodative perspective, where we provide tools and we meet certain individuals where they are. But where we really want to reach is the accessibility stage, where everybody has the resources, what they need, in a proactive manner. Less reactive, but more proactively addressing everyone's educational needs. And so a big part of UDL is technology. In technology, we're seeing a number of trends. On the left here, we see that technology has an awesome promise, right, to really reshape education and to kind of think about how we're teaching, how we're interacting with our students. And it certainly has. But on the other side, a lot of technology, and I'm guilty of this as an education consultant, has just been oversold and underused, right? So technology is typically thrown in the classroom, and teachers are really told two words: good luck, and not really maximizing the technology to its fullest potential. So I think it's kind of good to take a balanced approach there. And now I'd like to posit to you kind of an analogy here. If you're new to the Tpac model, it's this model on the right, and when I first saw it, I thought it was like a triple scoop of ice cream, which it very much resembles. And here's a point in which I'd like to ask for a little audience participation. Is there any similarities between ice cream and teaching for you all?
I never thought about it that way, Kimble.
Could be sweet, maybe a lot to juggle. You get a brain freeze sometimes. Right?
You have good analogies there, Kimble. Yeah.
Right. Many different flavors going on in the classroom. Mm-hmm. Well, that's what the Tpac model really resembles. Is a lot of knowledge that's represented by our teachers. And so traditionally, to be a good teacher, you just had to know content knowledge, this blue bubble on the right. If you knew about science, you were considered, the premier end-all be-all, right? When, back in the 19th century, you just needed to know the subject. Same with the English, maybe mathematics as well. But then, a researcher known as Schulman said, no, you kind of need to know how to teach as well. So you need this kind of combined knowledge of how to manage the classroom, but also manage your knowledge and kind of introduce it to your students. And as technology evolved, you know, a knowledge of technology certainly influenced the roles that we play in the classroom. And this kind of created a slew of sub-knowledges that we need to kind of acknowledge in the classroom. That, and with respect to that, you see this circle, this dotted circle around here, that this is framed in a different from classroom to classroom. Just as we have different students from classroom to classroom, we also have different teachers in the classroom, and thus different knowledge in the classroom from setting to setting. So thereby, I wanted to kind of interject a little Tpac research into as a framework for this. And a great resource for this as well is tpac.org. So this is where they have a lot of great resources. They have a Mendeley database with, I think, over 1,200 Tpac-related articles. A good overview of what Tpac is. And Tpac, too, is a growing research field. And the people that kind of coined this were Mishra and Kaler in 2006. Other researchers such as Harris have definitely embraced this framework. And following the UD 2014 conference, I had another great opportunity to present at EdMedia 2014, which was in Finland. And so I presented a poster of this presentation there, and that was a phenomenal experience. So maybe, Linda, we can connect some other time and talk story about all the crazy cool stuff that's going on in Finland, too.
Oh, definitely. That'd be fun.
That was just a great experience. And I've made a list in your resource folder of all of these conferences and organizations, too. So happy to share those.
Great. So what Kimble is talking about is the show notes, bit.ly/gr44notes. And I think it's in my lower third as well.
So, you know, and with respect to going back to UDL, you know, I think in order to promote and support UDL, my philosophy was that you have to have some understanding of technology and definitely pedagogy as well as content. So I'm kind of looking at things with my study through a dual framework here. And I think, or initially I thought that the two were inseparable, and that UDL came first, and then kind of teachers would refine their knowledge. But I'll go into my findings towards the end of this presentation. But the purpose of this study was just to kind of describe what's going on in the public sector with this one particular teacher. And just to describe what does this look like, what's going on, where are the students, how does this teacher prepare for this? And I developed two main questions. So number one, how does this Title I teacher prepare for her instruction? And number two, what does it look like when she delivers it? So from that, I was fortunate enough to connect with this participant, and she gave me the blessing to come to her classroom. She is as I mentioned, a Title I teacher at a Central Oahu school. And what's interesting is that she teaches first grade, but she herself is in a mobility scooter. And an unusual thing about this teacher is that with her own dime, her own credit card, she bought every single student in her classroom a netbook computer, which most first grade classrooms do not have netbooks, and don't have that much technology to begin with. But with that, she also bought them a series of interactive clickers, a smart board, an interactive whiteboard, and a range of other kind of web-based subscriptions. So I was kind of excited. I was like, well, this lady really is passionate about technology, and these students certainly don't have a lot of access to this, so this seems like a really cool person to investigate. So she gave me the green light, and so as I quickly came to realize that she designed two main environments in her classroom. The most obvious was her physical environment, where she arranged her desks, which was a really cool layout. On the left, we see that she has three main pods for students to go around, three main centers. And she has a lot of technology in there, a smartboard in the background. And on the right, you can see her laptop. And so she invested in a software that allows her to manage all of her student computers. So in a way, she was kind of managing a virtual environment as well. So a lot was going on in this classroom, as there is in a lot of our classrooms. And so my role kind of changed. Traditionally I was the videographer, or actually the coach, or even the teacher in the classroom. So never before had I had the experience of actually just sitting in the corner, just kind of patiently observing, and not making any judgment and giving feedback. So that was my role as a researcher. And I certainly grew through this experience. And I'll show you in a little bit how I kind of took notes. But let me first introduce the elements of a case study. A case study basically means you develop your research questions, you find the case, and then you kind of prepare your tools, and then you collect everything. And after you've collected a slew of data through interviews and such, you go through the evaluation phase and analyze your things and preparing for a big report. In my case, this is the dissertation that I'm preparing for. And that's the final stage I'm at, so again, fingers crossed. Mahalo. All right, so qualitative research, let's talk about that. Traditional education research is based in numbers, which is quantitative research, right? We have a lot of stats, a lot of numbers, a lot of charts and figures, that kind of thing. Qualitative is quite the opposite. Qualitative is very process-oriented. You kind of look at the big picture. You go in there not knowing what to really expect. And another thing about this is it's very contextual. As I mentioned, from classroom to classroom, things may look very different. So a lot of this cannot be generalized to every single classroom, which is okay. I wanted to just portray a unique teacher and a unique setting. So the qualitative approach was the best fit for this. So let's talk about how I collected data. And in these, the resource folder that Linda developed, I made a Google Doc of this document on the left. It's called the UDL Guidelines Educator Checklist. And so everybody has access to this. It's a really cool document that goes through all of the guidelines for UDL, and it's hyperlinked to websites with examples. So you can kind of ping these guidelines on the left and kind of type in your notes on the right. So what you'll do is just make a copy of that Google Doc and add whatever notes you want to do with that. But definitely share the UDL gospel. It's awesome. So let's talk about how I collected data. I collect with respect to each UDL guideline, and there are 9 major tenets, as you can see here. I conducted 9 observations. So every Wednesday for an instructional quarter, I went to this classroom for about half a day to observe what was going on in this classroom. I did this on my iPad, and I was able to use this UDL checklist in a pages format, so I could take notes, ping to the websites for resources, and jot my ideas down. And then following these observations, I recorded these interviews. And following the interviews, I collected everything that the teacher had developed. So a big part of these lessons were smart notebook lessons, but this could very well be in today's classrooms, Google Docs or Google presentations, whatever is at your disposal. But again, this teacher gave me the blessing to collect her materials and to go through them. So I went through the process of collecting all of these, consolidating them into PDF formats, and then I threw everything into Google Drive where I could analyze everything and kind of cross-analyze things. And this kind of cross-analysis is also known as constant comparative method, where you have a whole bunch of data from different sources and you compare them amongst each other. So here's some resources for the kind of premier qualitative researchers and their kind of tips and suggestions for that. So basically what this meant was I had to comb through a lot of data without any expectations. And a lot of ideas and my conclusions kind of emerged from this. And as a researcher, I was kind of the primary instrument, so it was up to me to kind of interpret all of this data. And altogether, this data compiled was over 800 pages of documents. So qualitative certainly means a lot of data, a lot of data. But again, going back to Google, if you upload everything, you can protectively secure everything, keep it locked up, and always have a backup copy. And this is kind of my work center here. This is my office where I'm talking right now. With Luna in the corner and a guitar on the left, I was able to kind of just crank through all this data and organize it all. And on the bottom was just my typical Saturday morning breakfast, where I would just pound a whole bunch of chow and then head over to the office and kind of go through it all. Yeah, definitely a Southern boy. That's grit too. So, but giving props to Google, you know, I'd like to acknowledge the fact that UH, as our official platform, adopted Google Apps. So, with every single line of transcript and every kind of note that I made from my observations, I plugged that into a Google Sheet. And what I did was I also made up these codes with respect to the Tpac and UDL framework. So I kind of marked where I thought this instance kind of corresponded to the frameworks. So having this on a spreadsheet for each of my observations, for each of my interviews, and each of the materials that I collected was super, super helpful. And I can, you know, I bet for our students in the classroom, Google can certainly play an ever important role in kind of organizing and kind of going through data and presenting this data too. So as I mentioned, I did this for each of my interviews, each of my observations, and each of the materials. So this, and for each of my research questions. So this came out to be about 6 mega spreadsheets of data. And this is where I can, you know, tie everything together with these spreadsheets and kind of look at the big picture of things and these major trends that emerge. So in qualitative research, when data emerges, you look for codes and patterns. And what emerged in my study was a big emphasis upon students. Also looking at students as individuals. And technology certainly played a big part in that. And as you whittle things down in qualitative research, you develop categories, and then you can kind of plug them into themes. So with my framework, in this particular qualitative framework, I was able to correspond these patterns to the frameworks at hand and the tenets of Tpac and UDL. So a major important component of qualitative research is being rigorous. You know, and it's showing that you're really being meticulous and putting a great deal of effort and covering a lot of bases through your research. And you can do this through having peer reviewers and consulting with experts. And this is known as Interrater Reliability. Another big component of rigor is member checking, and you can do this by kind of prolonging your research. And so you just don't rush through things. You want to check with the participant to verify, is this what I'm seeing? Does this make sense? That kind of thing. So that's known as member checking. Another critical component is transferability. And the way to do that is to provide thick and rich descriptions of what you're seeing and observing. And you can certainly do that with your Google tools. You know, when you're in the field, you can take ample notes and attach them and hyperlink them in a number of different ways. And that's what I did. I took a lot of audio notes, I took picture notes, and a lot of written type notes as well, and organized them in Drive. Another critical component is maintaining credibility and dependability. So at the heart of this is maintaining an audit trail where you can kind of triangulate things and having a lot of data. So again, having a peer that can review things, or if you're at a university, you can have an expert review things. You can check with a participant and you can extend things. And one way, going back to Google, that you can do that, certainly through Google Drive, right? Whatever you upload there, you can collaborate with and communicate ideas to say, this is what I'm seeing, and you can be really transparent with the data that you're collecting and then kind of interpreting. And lastly, you want to be able to confirm this. So again, this is where the audit trail is really crucial, where you can kind of say, hey, I went through these steps and these sequences to collect this data, and thereby you can kind of confirm that, hey, I really paid my dues, so to speak, and I really gathered as much data as I possibly could to kind of make these conclusions. So by all means, this is not a perfect study. You know, I'm getting my driver's license, so to speak, to be a researcher. I think that's what a PhD program does. You know, the biggest thing is this case study cannot be applied to every single teacher, you know, in the DOE or much less in her particular complex. But you know, it was also limited by the amount of time. You know, and this was at the tail end of a school year, so I was able to see what things looked like in the spring semester as opposed to, you know, the whole evolution of the course of the school. But also, due to technology too, technology is always evolving, so it's hard to encapsulate everything. So there's so many variables that it makes it impossible to capture everything. So you just try to capture what you can and kind of cover your bases, so to speak, as we mentioned. So let's talk about what I found and how these kind of relate to my research questions. So how does this Title I teacher, how did she prepare for supporting inclusion in her classroom? Well, first and foremost, she created a number of instructional materials. And to do so, she used a lot of different software. And what was also cool that I discovered that she designed a physical layout of the classroom that was really neat and kind of not only gave herself accessibility, but her students in an unusual way. You know, not your typical row of desks and that kind of arrangement. She also, as I discovered, used a lot of web resources. And therein, she was able to collaborate with a lot of people around the world, as we can with a lot of Google tools, right? So I corresponded a lot of these findings to see how they would connect with both UDL with elements at Tpac. And so when she was creating materials, she represented content in a number of different ways, and that connected to her knowledge of pedagogy. And that's how I'm kind of justifying and seeing things. When she designed her classroom, I saw that as an example of how she can give her students options for action and expressing themselves in the classroom. So she had to have a combined knowledge of technology for kids to interact with technology, but also the pedagogy of knowing when to facilitate that. And with respect to all these cool web resources, and I'll show these in a second, she definitely had to have a knowledge of technology. And to make this happen, to employ all the software, she had to know all three, kind of, you know, how to represent content, how to motivate the kids, and to kind of allow opportunities for them to kind of interact on individual basis. So let's talk about how she represented content. One thing that she did was she developed electronic files for her students to interact with each morning. And this was part of a routine called the morning warm-up, where she sent out a digital file to them through their netbooks and through this classroom management software. And the students were able to hear the teacher narrate stories to them. So her traditional text was transformed into an electronic means where the kids could also not only hear her voice, but they could highlight that too, that text. Most of our textbooks are published where, right? On Texas, right? And so, you know, not too many of our students here in Hawaii know about squirrels or mittens, and so thereby this teacher was able to represent content in more of a meaningful way, and electronically too. And it was really neat. She gave her students the opportunity to come up to the smartboard occasionally, but also on the computers. She allowed them access to kind of free flow around the classroom. So when it was time to work behind the computer, they would sit there, but they had group work too, and would float around the classroom. And I thought this particular layout was really kind of unique and facilitated that. And let's talk about how she engaged her students and how she prepared for that. She subscribed to a service called IXL, which is kind of a web-based kind of tutorials. And another service that she used is Starfall. You know, it's kind of good for those primary school levels of phonics and numbers skills. But for assessment, she used a service called Ames Web. And you know, I'm not promoting these or discouraging anyone from using these, but I'm just saying that it takes a certain amount of technological knowledge to know how to subscribe to these, how to manage it, and as it is for some of the advanced Google features too. One thing that was really cool, where I saw the interactions of Tpac and UDL, was where this particular teacher connected with others. And this is through a website called teacherspayteachers.com. Right? We're all familiar with Amazon, right? And what Teachers Pay Teachers is kind of like an Amazon for instructional materials. And man, this is where this teacher was a rock star. She had a 4.0, a perfect rating for the product she produced. She had like over almost 3,000 votes for her materials. And what's another thing that was really kind of touching is the money she generated from the materials that she sold through Teachers Pay Teachers. She was able to buy herself an accessible van, which I thought was really cool. So my second question was like, all right, so she does all this work, she puts in a lot of effort and connects with a lot of teachers around the world. How does she implement this, and what does it look like in the classroom? So again, I wanted to correspond things, or connect them between the UDL framework along with the elements of Tpac. And I'll go through examples of these real quick. So when she was talking about representing content, she really saw students as individuals. And she, growing up with a disability, she had a firm belief that she didn't want to teach, or treat, rather, students differently. She would teach them individually differently, but she wouldn't treat them differently. And I think that's an important distinction. And to do that, she gave the students a lot of choice and gave them a lot of autonomy, you know. So color code these words, you know, with your choice, the color of your choice. And she used a lot of different media. And she also supported a lot of collaboration. And, you know, with UDL, it doesn't always have to be high-tech as well. So UDL can be high-tech and low-tech. And that's what this teacher, I thought, she kind of facilitated well. You know, going back to her netbooks, she was able to represent or give students the ways to interact with content in a number of different ways. They could click on content, they could speak to content, and they could listen to it in a number of different ways. So that gave students options for actions and expression. A big part of this was gaming and digital, you know, digital materials, as well as the websites that she subscribed to. And for engaging her students, she was able to have them collaborate together. So one thing that was kind of neat was she had a student job of the week, which she coined as the student or the computer monitor. And this particular student would reside by the smartboard and kind of highlight the keywords as students would call them out. And so in that particular instance, she was kind of facilitating things, right? Less instructing and less dictating, but more facilitating, right? So she wasn't just the knowledge provider. She was kind of encouraging students to work together and using kind of technology as a cool platform to do that. So coming back full circle now to my findings, I kind of flipped things, and I saw that her knowledge of Tpac and certain elements in particular helped her support UDL. And that kind of came out of her knowledge of teaching, more so her pedagogy, and less so of her knowledge of content, but also out of her strong knowledge of technology. So that's how she was able to incorporate all of these tools, hardware, the software. She even had her own classroom network. She had a router in there, which yeah, it was amazing. So what this really means is that in the grand old scheme of things, there are a number of challenges that our teachers face, and that this particular teacher faced. But with that, she had a number of strengths. She had a lot of great materials that she could utilize and strategies, but at the same time, she was constantly battling with a lot of socioeconomic issues, right? When these kids would go home, they didn't have access to a lot of the technology. So a lot of her teaching relied on kind of perseverance and kind of encouraging the students, as it does with a lot of teaching. But I would say more so in a Title I setting and more poverty restriction community. And I think that could be an area for definitely future research. So a few things that were really unique about this study were obviously the participant herself. She invested a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of effort into developing electronic and digital resources, as do a lot of our Kumu across the state. And another thing that's kind of cool, in my opinion, is like the literature. A lot of Tpac and UDL literature hasn't converged before, and now I kind of see this as an opportunity to kind of continue the conversation with these. As for the methodology, I was able to kind of use a lot of different technology. This kind of looks like an Apple commercial here with my iPhone and my iPad and my MacBook Pro. But technology is always kind of evolving, and Google Drive played a critical role in kind of going through my revisions, tracking my data, securely storing it, and I think that's huge. Another cool software that I use is this transcript software called Move Captioner that allows you to caption videos. But for me, with my interviews, it allowed me to transcribe the audio samples and to kind of break things down line by line. And I think lastly, I think the findings for this are pretty unusual and kind of a unique stamp in time of where we're using technology in the DOE and at our Title I schools and how it's being utilized and with the right skill set, what it may look like, in certain ways. Ken has a question here. Did the teacher's implementation of tech and UDL influence other teachers on campus? Yes, absolutely. And what's crazy, just as these teachers connected with this teacher, through Teachers Pay Teachers, this was pretty much like the go-to classroom for a lot of teachers to kind of borrow curricula. So I'd like to jovially suggest that teachers bribed her by lunch, buying her lunch by saying, hey, will you give me these files, will you give me these materials? And out of the kindness of her heart, she would certainly share these materials and resources. And so that kind of leads me to a larger point here, that there are a lot of implications for UDL and this particular study, that it can't be done in a vacuum. this is one particular teacher in one particular instance and time at a particular site. But I think this has a lot of implications for how we can think about how we're looking at our teachers, what roles they play, what role our curriculum developers play, and how we can support things at different levels throughout the DOE, and at a larger level, how we prepare teachers. This had a profound impact on how I grew as a researcher, and you know, I'm just excited to continue this because I think technology is going to evolve as Google's continually evolving, and how we can stay on top of that and support our teachers and train them, and also support the technology to support all of our learners. You know, that's the bottom line.
Hey, sorry, Kimble, can I jump in just for a second?
Yeah, absolutely.
I love this slide because actually, I'm not going to share my screen, we don't have time, but on my messy notes, I have exactly these questions for you. I was wondering if you were going to suggest to the folks at Project Inspire that you created an online course on these things. I was wondering if you were talking to the College of Ed, because I think our pre-service teachers need some of this information. And I was wondering, too, if those pre-service teachers at UH are using Google Apps, because you had said they adopted it. But we can have a side conversation. I'm just really glad to see that I was on the right track, I guess, following you. Your presentation's amazing. And one thing, I'm not sure if you said it, I think there's that phrase, a growth mindset. And I think the teacher you watched never took no for an answer. She instead just had that growth mindset where she thought, well, this is what I want to do. How can I make it happen? And I love that. I think that's really exciting. She sounds so inspiring.
Absolutely. You know, and, you know, I think there are a number of implications, you know, for this in preparing our teachers, but also preparing our schools, the infrastructure. And one thing that's cool is this doesn't take a lot of money. You know, this takes just a lot of coordination, I think. But I think we can certainly do that with the technology. We have the technology, right, to add a little cliche there. Yeah, but I think we can definitely make Tpac and UDL part of our vernacular, part of our discourse. And as we're doing so, thinking about how we prepare our instruction proactively and collaboratively. Lastly, I think there's also, for our future researchers out there, there's plenty of opportunities out there to complement this. As these are huge areas for the DOE is kind of crying for these areas too, to know how we can support our SPED services, how we can increase our grad rates, how we can evaluate our teachers. I think the UDL checklist is a great opportunity to collaborate with teachers. And I think these are all awesome resources. So I'd encourage everybody to kind of visit them as well and subscribe to them. The next UD conference is going to be in 2016, and I believe that is going to be in York, in England. So come one, come all. And another thing about that conference is that it invites all stakeholders in accessibility. So there we had, you know, we had designers, we had architects, we had researchers, and I think that's what it's going to take to kind of push education to the next level too, and to support UDL at the K through 12 level. It's just a wide variety of stakeholders taking on non-traditional roles and pushing things forward. So a big mahalo to you all for letting me spout off here. It's always a pleasure to connect with you, and I'm happy to share these resources and to collaborate with you. Linda is awesome, and a big mahalo to you for bringing me on board.
Well, thank you, Kimble. It's fantastic, so comprehensive and so informative, and you put your whole life for the past how many years on this presentation? Quite amazing.
So working
and our students complain about the research that they do. This doesn't even compare. Fantastic. I wanted to hit some of the question and answers. I didn't realize people were on there, and I clicked on it, and first thing, Heather Gauk was asking if you're on Twitter, and you
Yes.
are, right?
Yeah, I am. And so my handle is @handyside. And if you want to know the history behind that, that's kind of a family name that each McCann boy gets the middle name Handyside. So yeah, my handle is @handyside.
Great, great. Another one I wanted to hit, let's see. Heather asks, will we be able to get the teacher's contact information for Twitter or GHO? And I'm assuming she's talking about the teacher that you
Participant?
follow. Yeah, that's probably not public.
Yeah, that would be in violation of the Internal Review Board, the IRB policy.
Yeah.
But that being said, I'm sure she is eager to connect, and I think yeah. I'm sorry, I just can't reveal that at this point in time.
Yeah. That's what I figured. And Heather also asks, you talked about the book on the CAST website, Teaching Every Student in the Digital Age. She's asking if it's free to read, or can we get a hard copy for free sent to us?
The hard copy is paid for, but the online version is free. And I think there's even a new book that's kind of takes UDL to the next level. So I'll share that through the G+ community as well.
Cool. Nice. Does anybody else? Jody is on. She came on. Thanks for coming on. Jody Brown's our regular. Do you have any questions, Jody, of Kimble? No? Yes? And we also had Mimi Wong was on for a while. I'm not sure if she had something else to do, but Kimble mentioned her as his boss. And we're glad that you came on, Mimi.
Hello, Mimi.
Thanks for coming on. Kimble, that was fantastic.
Oh, thank you so much. I've learned from everybody here, and it's cool to connect with everybody in this capacity. And I look forward to maybe is everybody here going to go to the schools of the future, probably, or hopefully?
I am.
Okay.
Michelle is.
Awesome.
Well, what I love about this presentation is that it will be here for other people. You can, tell them about it and spread the word, and we can refer back to this. So, and it's good practice for you, right? You're going to do the same thing.
Yeah.
You're going to be. When are you going to be a doctor?
Oh, that's a good question. Hopefully this semester. We'll see.
Nice.
So yeah, I'm meeting with a professor this week to kind of review things. So.
Very good.
Yeah, getting there.
Really appreciate you coming on and sharing what you have with us.
Oh man, thank you.
It's really awesome. Okay, we are 5 minutes past the hour, and it's been a full hour. Love the topic, love the fact that we can go back and explore on our own, and I've got a couple of links that I want to explore for sure. But yeah, keeping us thinking about including everyone in the educational process, I think that's very, very important. So thank you again, Kimble. Really, really.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, guys.
Okay, so without further ado, we're going to stop the broadcast, and thanks everyone for coming on. We have a fantastic show next week. It will be on global collaboration, and Heather Gauk and Karen Corbell will be on with their teacher in Alaska. They've done some collaborating, and they will talk to us about it, so that should be an interesting show for sure. So, take care, everyone, and we'll see you next week.